My uncle said, I'm leaving my 8.7 million odd to whoever takes care of me. My siblings started competing. I moved in and forgot about the money. That's why they screamed at the will reading. Uncle Sut, Harold, owned so much commercial real estate in our city that half the buildings downtown felt like they paid him rent out of habit. But he refused to hire help. No strangers in my house, he'd say, shuffling through his 3-story place with a cane, the rooms echoing like a museum. I want family. Then he'd glance around the table like he was taking bets. The announcement turned my siblings into performers. My brother, Gavin, began visiting twice a week with groceries Uncle Harold never asked for. Items chosen to be seen carrying, not necessarily to be eaten. My sister, Paige, arranged a meal prep service and delivered it with printed dietary guidelines. My youngest brother, Noah, built a medication tracking app just for Uncle Harold and demonstrated it loudly whenever anyone else was around. They'd arrive on the same afternoons, tripping over each other to adjust his thermostat and fluff pillows. Comfortable? Need anything? Did you take your meds? It was care for an audience. I watched it for 3 months before I made my move. One Tuesday morning, when the house was quiet and no one was competing, I said, I'm moving in. Uncle Harold lowered his newspaper. Why? Because Sunday visits aren't care, I said. They're auditions. I gave up my apartment that week. 2 suitcases, my laptop, and a calm I didn't bother explaining. The family group chat exploded. Shameless, manipulative, isolating him. They weren't angry that I'd taken advantage of an old man. They were angry that I'd stepped onto their stage and turned the lights off. I didn't hover. I didn't make a show of helping. I cooked because I was hungry, too. I drove him to appointments because I was already going into town. When he couldn't sleep and wandered into the kitchen at 2 a.m., I'd be there working, and we'd talk about nothing important. Some nights we watched old westerns. Some days we argued about whether his tomato plants needed more water. It wasn't heroic. It was life. When my siblings showed up with their gift bags and exaggerated concern, they'd find Uncle Harold and me doing something deeply unimpressive. Folding laundry, yelling at Netflix, debating sports. Paige would get tight. Why don't you tell us what you need? Uncle Harold would shrug. I don't need anything. We're fine. Once there wasn't an audience, the visits thinned out. Gavin got busy with work. Noah moved across the country. Paige had another kid. They still called sometimes. Short, polite, transactional calls. I'd hand the phone to Uncle Harold and leave the room so he could talk without performing. Somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about the inheritance. Living with him became my normal. He taught me investing. I taught him streaming. He told stories about building his business. I told him about my messy career and worst dating decisions. One night he looked at me over tea and said, You know what's funny? Your siblings think you moved in for my money. Yeah, I said. I know. He tilted his head. Did you? I answered honestly. Maybe at first. Now you're just my weird roommate. He laughed so hard he started coughing. When he caught his breath, he said, I'm leaving everything to you. I started to protest, and he cut me off. Not because you're taking care of me. You're just living your life, and I happen to be in it. That's the difference. 4 years later, he died in his sleep on a Tuesday. The same day of the week, I moved in. At the will reading, my siblings sat rigid, ready. They'd done the math. The attorney read, I leave my entire estate valued at 8.7 million Nazi to my niece, Mara, who moved in when everyone else moved on. The explosion was immediate. 4 years of free rent, Gavin shouted. She manipulated him, Paige snapped. Noah stared at me like I'd stolen oxygen. The attorney handed me an envelope. Inside was Uncle Harold's final note. The others tried to purchase an inheritance. You accidentally earned a friendship. I can't take money with me, but I could choose who gets the house. You already made a home. They contested the will and lost. They haven't spoken to me since. I still live in his house. And the real inheritance wasn't the money. It was the lesson. Love that keeps receipts isn't love at all. Share this with someone who needs the reminder that showing up isn't a schedule. It's a life.